Good afternoon. It is 5 o'clock on Tuesday, October 4th, 2022. I'd like to call to order the St. Croix County Board of Supervisors. For our invocation today, we have Pastor Ted Marsh. Pastor Ted, glad you could join us today.
Are we ready for that?
We are.
Perfect. Thank you. It's an honor to be here. Heavenly Father, I just thank you for this day and the changing of the season and the beauty of it. Lord, I just thank you for all these beautiful people that you brought into this meeting. And Lord, I just ask that you speak to each and every one of us, your will and your way. And Lord, just bless them in Jesus' name. Amen.
We're ready for a roll call. Wonderful. Everybody makes it. Okay. Next on our agenda will be public comment. And first, we will hear from Bill Rubin from St. Croix EDC with some updates. Bill?
Good afternoon, and I echo Pastor Ted's comments about what a beautiful day it is in the Valley. I've got two things this afternoon. As you know, many of you know, the EDC board meets the second Tuesday of each month. I've got an invitation to Supervisor District Number 12. Hopefully he can be at that meeting. I asked that in light of comments that were made by him at the Community Development Committee meeting, 15 September. I was not able to attend that meeting. I was at an EDC function, but those comments stand polar opposite, or if you want to use a nautical term, 180 degrees from his comments at a one-on-one meeting he had with me back in late February. So I appreciate your opportunity to attend, and maybe you can shed some light on it. We'll reserve the first 15 minutes of that meeting. It's in Roberts. We'll get you the agenda by U.S. mail. A couple of updates. So I think you've heard me speak before about the Main Street Bounce Back program. $10,000 grants to businesses that take that big leap and likely occupy space on Main Street and office buildings and so on for the very first time. It has to be occupying previously vacant space. At the September meeting of the Regional Planning Commission, they acted on a series of applications. St. Croix County's total now stands at 140, which means $1.4 million have come to businesses that have occupied, again, I'm emphasizing and repeating myself, previously vacant space. I think that there are 10 more businesses out there. That'll get us out to $1.5 million. The program closes the end of December. So again, if you know somebody that's willing to occupy at least a threshold of 400 square feet, ideally along Main Street, but it could be office space and commercial space and so on, there'll be an opportunity to make that application. October, it's manufacturing month. Last year I spoke and told you about the common thread between the industrial baker and the heavy weldment company and the metal fabricator and the injection molding company that spits out micro parts that are measured in microns. It's after 5 o'clock. I will throw in distillers and brewers. They're all manufacturers. And so with Manufacturing Month, we're going to be out and around, and we're going to be calling on some of those manufacturers and recognizing them for the significant impact that they make across the state, across the region, across the valley, across St. Croix County. So you'll likely get a couple of follow-ups on that. October is also National Co-op Month. Supervisor Van Someren, congratulations on a long career, congratulations on retirement, congratulations on public service. So we were at St. Croix Electric Cooperative, perhaps the most identifiable rural utility company in the county, but there are also retail purchasing co-ops. There are grocery co-ops. Of course, there's a big ag co-op that resulted from the merger of Landmark and Countryside. I think it's Alcivia in rural New Richmond. We will be out and around, again, lifting those businesses up, those co-ops up. Last item, November 8th through the 14th is Apprenticeship Week. And again, it's an opportunity for us to recognize employers that take that big leap on, maybe it's a high school student, or if you're in the trades at a technical college, you're after likely a registered apprenticeship. But, you know, with so many businesses chasing the same scarce jobs, apprenticeship are an opportunity for a junior or senior in high school in good academic standing to get out and get introduced to a medical business, hospitality, retail, all of those things, and the same with those students looking to get credentialed as an electrician. Those are my comments. Thank you very much. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, Bill. Next, we have Annette Massey regarding resolution amending personnel policy.
Good evening. Under your direction, Policy 2.4 was returned to the Administration Committee for review. I greatly appreciate that you have gone on record showing that your support of employee benefits. It shows purposeful intent that you wish to preserve employer trust, which has been of concern to many employees. It's been noted that the long-term sick bank was never intended to be a retirement vehicle for employees. Retired Chief Deputy Volkert, who attended many of these meetings, may attest differently. After all, in 2004, Chief Deputy Volkert first requested our Personnel Department to create a vehicle allowing the conversion of long-term sick bank at the time of retirement. A revised proposed policy is before you tonight. It is important to note that the proposed policy doesn't grandfather current employees to all subsections of the current policy. Subsection 8, allowing an annual year-end election to transfer PTO hours into the employee's long-term sick bank, known as a PTO transfer option, has been eliminated. This elimination is not a deal breaker, however, as two critical components remain which make the proposed policy agreeable to most employees. Subsection 7 allows employees earned but unused PTO hours in excess of the permitted maximums to roll to their long-term sick bank, a fundamental concern that Lieutenant Coleman emphasized in his previous public comments. Dedicated employees who show up to work deserve to be compensated for their unfettered reliability and loyalty. Therefore, having these excess hours roll to long-term sick bank is essential. Subsection 9 grandfathers retiring employees hired before the policy change to convert all of their unused LTSB hours at their last rate of pay, depositing into a retirement health savings account. Employees hired after this policy change will have these hours available for long-term sick absence. Retaining these two subsections realigns our vision and shows your support for employee benefits. Later in your packet, you will find a funding resolution. Currently, the Retirement Health Savings Fund is not in a deficit. Also, there is no indication that every retirement-eligible employee will exit tomorrow or even have a bank balance. Although a fund transfer seems overawing, it is essential to remember that a reallocation of fund balances has no direct financial impact, as they, more importantly, indicate a realignment of fiscal priorities and resources. In closing, I would like to thank you for your willingness to review the latest proposal to Policy 2.4. Resoundingly, you are sending a message to employees that you are genuine in preserving employer trust. I encourage you to approve the proposed 2.4 policy. I also thank you for your commitment to realigning fiscal priorities and resources that directly affect employees who faithfully serve all of St. Croix County citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Annette. Other public comments? Anyone else from the public that would like to address the board? Any public comment? Any public comment? Okay, we will move on to our consent agenda. Do we have a motion for the consent agenda? Supervisor Osnes, second. Supervisor Counter, thank you. I believe we're ready to vote on the consent agenda. And that's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, next we have a little training to do for the board, which is a little unusual, but should be interesting. Narcan training provided by Health and Human Services.
Thank you for allowing us to present to you Narcan training. My name is Char Lopez. I am the Behavioral Health Administrator. This is Cara Rangan. She is one of the ARPA-funded case managers that we have, and she's actually located here. She's the only Health and Human Services staff who is permanently located here at the Government Center. So just a little bit, normally this training is about 30, 45 minutes, so we have condensed it, and Cara actually has some Narcan for all the members of the board, as well as anyone in the audience that would like some to take home. And we're going to talk a little bit about the history of how we even got involved in this. And then Cara has a video to show. And then we can take some questions, but please know we are not opioid experts. We do have Dr. Anwar in the office, so we can defer to him. Okay, so back in 2020, Public Health became involved in a program sponsored by the Wisconsin Department of Health Services, our DHS, providing training on the use of and the distribution of Narcan. Narcan, also known as naloxone, is a medication that is utilized to temporarily reverse the effects of opioid overdose. The program, known as the Narcan Direct program, allows the Wisconsin DHS to provide training and Narcan to the participants and those who are trained. Within the last year, Cara Rangens and I have received the Train the Trainer training and have distributed nearly 450 Narcan kits to St. Croix County Health and Human Services staff, clients, loved ones of those at risk, and we've done numerous presentations to different groups and individuals. Opioids can be, they're a substance that are either natural or synthetic. They can be prescribed or they can be illegal. Common opioids that we may have in our own medicine cabinets include oxycodone, Dilaudid, and we might even have Tylenol with codeine for our cough. Some opioids have been reported in the news lately and recently include fentanyl, and there's several different. They're new. They're so new. I can't even recall the technical names for them. One they refer to as ISO. I believe that was reported as well in the news within the last couple weeks, which is warned to be even more deadly than fentanyl. Last week, there were reports on rainbow fentanyl that is actually marketed by dealers to young adults. And within the last month, there was believed to be what might be the largest fentanyl bust in the Twin Cities area, with experts saying the amount seized was enough to kill 1/5 of the population of Minnesota, and I might say probably Wisconsin as well. So an opioid's primary purpose is to manage pain and suppress cough. The one use of opioids, when using opioids creates euphoria, contentment, and detachment. And depending upon the opioid and the amount taken, the effects of Narcan can last anywhere from 3 hours to 24 hours, which is important to know because depending upon what somebody took, how much somebody took, the amount of Narcan that is needed to reverse that is directly affected. Narcan only lasts anywhere from 30 to 90 minutes, so you don't have a big window of time. Narcan or naloxone has one primary function, and that is to reverse the effects of an opioid. You'll hear in Cara's training that an overdose can look a lot like a medical emergency. It can look like a heart attack. It can look like low blood sugar. And if you use Narcan on somebody who doesn't have an opioid overdose or isn't experiencing that, there isn't a negative effect to that. You can use Narcan on babies, children, animals, and according to the Wisconsin Department of Health and Human Services 2020 data, Wisconsin had 1,227 deaths, and they didn't have their numbers updated as of 2020. but they did have updated numbers for 2021 on emergency room and inpatient hospital room visits, and there were in the state 4,258 opioid-related visits or inpatient stays in the hospital. So Cara is going to do the training. Do you want me to pass out? Okay, and I will pass it out.
So this video is pretty short. Like Shar said, the training that we did with Shar was 30 minutes, and then the training for trainer was even longer. But for today's purposes, if you want a kit, if you want more than one, I think we might have more than one, and then we'll be reordering, right, Shar? So here we go.
Here's how you can safely administer Narcan. First, you need to know if someone is having an opioid overdose. Are they alert and awake? Are they breathing at all or very slowly? Do they sound like they're snoring or gurgling? Are they limp with clammy skin? Are lips or fingertips blue? If they have any of these symptoms, call 911. Follow the directions they give you. Let them know if the person has stopped or slowed breathing. If you can't wake them by yelling their name or rubbing your knuckles on their chest, give Narcan. If they're not breathing, open their mouth and remove any objects in it. Tilt their head back. Lift their chin. Pinch their nose. Give one breath every 5 seconds and continue this for 30 seconds. If the person is still not breathing on their own, give Narcan. It's simple. Just remove the device from the package, put the tip in either nostril until your fingers touch the nose, then press the plunger. Continue giving rescue breaths. And if there's no response after 2 to 3 minutes, give Narcan again. Sometimes it takes more than one dose. Once they're breathing again, put them on their side with their top leg and arm crossed over the body to prevent choking. Then stick around until emergency help arrives. Remember to keep an eye on them constantly until emergency help arrives. They should be monitored for another 2 hours after the last dose is given. This is to make sure breathing does not slow or stop, because the dose can wear off and because the chance of another overdose is possible.
So for our purposes, we did the shorter video. This video and other videos on Narcan and how to distribute and use are available on YouTube. If you want to know more about it, and also we'll give you a sheet if you would like a sheet about it as well. So there's a lot of information available for our purposes in this training. This 2-minute video allows us to give you a packet to use. So a few things about the actual, in my backpack is the, yes.
One of the things that I did want to point out is that the when you call 911 in our area, it's not going to tell you to use rescue breathing. Our medical director within that dictates the comm center, they are going to tell you to do chest compressions. However, you may be in another district, you may be in another state, and they may tell folks to utilize the chest compressions. In there is a one-way valve mouthpiece that gives directions. So when folks are under duress, we don't usually remember directions. We don't remember the video. There's also a card in there there's the card that comes from the pack it has a lot of directions on it, but there's another laminated piece of paper that has very simple directions. They're bullet pointed to be able to just look at it at a glance and then use it. What questions do you have for us?
Supervisor Rambert?
So if we have misdiagnosed the person and gave them Narcan, it can't hurt them?
There is one exception to that if they're allergic to Narcan. But it doesn't have an adverse effect.
Supervisor Leaf?
So do these expire like EpiPens do?
That's a great question. Yes, they last about 2 years. They have a shelf life of about 2 years. And when I actually asked the state, you know, what does that mean? Do we have to get rid of them? The answer is they'll still be effective. They'll lose effectiveness. So you don't have to throw them away.
Other questions?
One other thing I should have said is that, so within the government center, Kara's here to provide training to anyone who needs it. She's actually up in she's officed out of the child support office, and anyone can just show up to the services center. We have at least 4 staff in the building at any given time who can train anyone from the public. And folks who need more than one, we can provide as many as we need. I don't think I said this either. Narcan Direct provides this to us at no cost, so that's part of the grant. There may be a little bit of a lapse in time. We have enough supply. The federal government was delayed in getting their monies to the state. But I believe that this will continue to be available for us. We just we have some reporting requirements, and they're very minimal. It really is, you know, how many did we get, how many people did we educate, how many, there's some other specific things that they ask, but it's pretty open.
The other thing is, there's 2 in the kits. There's directions, there's a face mask. So there's 2 of these. Each of these costs $75 a piece. There's gloves, and there's directions, and there's support numbers. So when people or yourself or whoever gets nervous, because in the moment, right, your adrenaline is going, and you're like, who am I supposed to call? People usually remember 911, but then if you're actually trying to support someone too, there's some numbers to call, like 211 or 988 if somebody feels suicidal in that moment, because we don't know what people's reactions are going to be when they do come back, possibly. The other thing is the kits themselves need to be held at a temperature of 60 to 70 degrees. So I always tell people not to have them in your car or don't carry them on your body. So usually like in a backpack or somewhere that, in your house, and just have them with you or in your office or whatever. So, yeah, I think that's.
Any other questions?
Okay, good.
All right.
Supervisor Osnes?
Is there a possibility you could give a class to county board members that might be interested in taking it?
Absolutely. There's no boundaries that are attached to the Narcan Direct program, so absolutely.
Good.
And Kara and I are the 2 that can do the bigger trainings. All of the Health and Human Services staff have the ability. This is something else I should have said. So because it's a prescription, the state of Wisconsin has a standing order with the pharmacy that allows them to distribute it to us. Dr. Plotz, our medical director, has written a standing order allowing Health and Human Services staff to carry it and train those who might need it. All right. All right.
I have a question. Is it effective on street drugs, heroin, and
It is effective on any opioid, so it has to be an opioid. So heroin, yes, but not. Yeah.
Might want to repeat the question for those
Yeah.
at home.
He just asked, he asked if it's effective on all street drugs, and I just said only in opioids. So, yeah, so the heroin, but not the meth.
Okay, what about fentanyl?
Yes, it's effective on fentanyl.
So if somebody is having an OD reaction to marijuana that you don't know if it's laced or not with fentanyl, go ahead and assume that it is.
100%, yes.
Right.
Yes, and that is a really good point, too, that there's such a thing as liquid fentanyl, which makes it very easy to mix with any substance, really. So it makes it very dangerous.
Just as an announcement, if people didn't see, so this Thursday, I'll be training here. I'm sorry. Okay, sorry. This Thursday, I'll be training in 1216, 9:30 to 12:30, and that's open to any employee or anybody in the county. So if you know folks, spread the word. I'll be training, I'll be here 3 hours. And then at Faith Community Church, across from Quick Trip on Thursday night. That's this week. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Kara. Hopefully, none of us are actually going to have to use this, but you never know. Okay, let's move on to County Administrator's report, financial report.
The financial report is in your packet. It's the finances through August. And I saw that Bill Rubin had snuck out already. But one of the things I was going to point out was the strong sales tax position St. Croix County has. 2 years ago was the first time that we had a month where we collected over $1 million in sales tax. Last year it happened twice. This year it's happened 5 times, including the last 4 months in a row. So the sales tax, which is reflective then of the volume that the businesses are selling within the county, because it's a percentage basis. So St. Croix County is doing very well as a whole, and that growth within the county and that successful business that we have here in the county also then contributes through the sales tax to the revenues coming into St. Croix County. That's the part that I was going to point out, but I'd be happy to entertain any questions there are in the financials. All right, we can move on to the second item then. So the second item under the administrator's report is a government center project update. And Supervisor Counter can jump in here as chair of the government center subcommittee if he wants to at all. But basically, sort of giving you parameters of what to expect over the next few months. Right now, we're out for bid on the precast portion of the project. Those bids are due next week on October 13th. So that's the first actual bid that we're going to have for the construction part of the project. So it'd be good to start getting those in. And then looking out to February, that's the last of the bid packages. That's the biggest bid package. That's the construction remodel part of it. So between now and February, it's only a few months here. We're wrapping up all of that design, getting those bid packages out, and we're going to have actual dollars then by February of what this project is going to cost us. So right now we've been working off estimates, and the most recent estimate is right within the ballpark of where we need to be. I think we're at about 83 million on the project through some of the changes that we've made. And while we did borrow $80 million, we've also been investing those monies in different securities to generate interest revenue. So we're going to generate anywhere from 2 to 3 million through the investments that our finance director, Leah Simonton, is managing. So those investments then are going to help cover that cost. And if we do end up running over, we'd also reserve some additional money within the capital improvement fund to help cover those costs also. And at that point in February, when we have those final costs, then we can really sit down and look at some of the alternatives that we have on this project and what it is that we prioritize and what we can still afford to do with the monies that we have available. Otherwise, that's kind of a recap of where we are on things. Do you have something to add, Supervisor Counter? Yep, go ahead.
So is, you said the bid packages are due in here shortly. They also, the final drawing packages with the specifications are under their final review right now for all the technical drawings. So you have the architects have done all the design work, and then there's alternate engineering firms that are also hired in that have oversight to make sure that all of the details and the specifications are drawn right. And so that's the process they're in right now. And my understanding is we should have some final drawing packages with specifications on the table within the very latest 2 weeks. It sounds like maybe even next week.
Yeah, and I think that covers the general layout of the building because I know we're still working on some of the details for the courts. So So where the walls and stuff are going to go is going to be completed with that package. They do this in different phases, and then the final, fixtures, the colors of the walls and the type of flooring materials and those types of things, really through the end of December into the beginning part of January, and that's when that last big bid package goes out. We will have an update at the November 1st County Board meeting. We'll have the architects and our construction manager in to talk about where that first bid came in. I think they're going to bring in some samples of the different materials that we're going to be using on the project, show you that final rendering that we're working off of. So you'll get a nice update rather than just my brief one at the November 1st County Board meeting. So look forward to that.
Any questions? Supervisor Otino?
Thank you. Is there any update on the Planning Commission for the City of Hudson meeting on the, actually letting us go forward with this? Even though I wasn't in favor of this project to start with, now that we're committed to it, any delays that come up, especially from that kind of a standpoint, cost us money.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Great question. I should have addressed that. The City of Hudson called a special plan commission meeting last week where they approved our plans, and then it was on their city council agenda last night. We received final approval, so that is all the approvals that we need. We'll be able to get a building permit from the city. That's all resolved.
Any other questions? I just want to offer a special thanks to Supervisor Counter for he's chairing the subcommittee. Based on his background, he's really been able to dive into a lot of detail and ask a lot of very pertinent, detailed questions, which has certainly given the subcommittee a lot more confidence in the process going forward. So thank you for that. Okay, we're going to move on to our business items. The first one will be consideration of a county administrator appointment of Dr. Anwar to the Health and Human Services Board. And I know Dr. Anwar I believe is here with us and is going to be willing to address the board, after which I believe he will be willing to answer some questions. And I want to make a couple quick comments ahead of time. First of all, I want to make sure that I remind everyone that we did go through the appropriate and proper process in terms of the interview and the appointment process. And secondly, probably more importantly, I know that we've all lived through a lot of challenges in the last couple of years with regard to the pandemic, a lot of very differing opinions. So I ask that any questions that be posed to Dr. Anwar certainly be appropriate and respectful. Thank you. Dr. Anwar, the floor is yours.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I got to do this first. So we need a motion on the to approve the appointment. Supervisor Osnes, second. Supervisor Cook, and now we are ready for your discussion.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm very honored to be here in front of you all. I know the pandemic has really changed a lot of how we live and how we vote, and there was a lot of politics involved, and there still is. And I want to make it clear, politics aside, I'm seeking this position mainly to give my knowledge and expertise to the board to use as they seem fit. I do not have an agenda. There's nothing that I'm pushing on anyone, and I don't want anyone to think that I have any ulterior motive. It's mainly just to give back to the community that has given me so much. I did prepare a statement about 2 minutes long. I'm not sure if that would be the best use of the board's time, but if they may. Okay, so just to give a little background on where I come from, I lived in St. Croix County now for about 3 years. I've worked in Western Wisconsin Health for about 6. My job at Western Wisconsin Health first started as a temporary physician job 6 years ago. It was one of my first jobs, and I was only supposed to work for a few weeks. The first week I worked at Western Wisconsin Health, I immediately fell in love with Wisconsin hospitality. I was not used to that as I come from the East Coast. I come from Washington, D.C., So as soon as I worked my first week, I was convincing my wife, who was finishing up residency in Chicago at the time in nephrology, to actually come to Wisconsin with me. She is now also working at Western Wisconsin Health as a transplant nephrologist. I have 2 daughters here. I've also just recently been reelected as their chief of staff for another 2-year appointment. And I just want you to understand from my background that I really believe in community engagement. I really believe that physicians, not just physicians, but everyone in the healthcare field has a responsibility to their community and to give back. And this is one way that I see that I can use my knowledge and expertise in giving back to my community through my knowledge and expertise through the board. I love serving my community. I feel I have a duty to give back, and I can think of no better way to service than the privilege of serving on this board.
Thank you. Questions? Supervisor Burning.
So you're absolutely correct in the fact that the last 2.5 years has brought a lot out amongst our community. Some things were pushed in the last 1.5 years here in St. Croix County specifically, to like specifically the ordinance that was pressed hard by the Health and Human Services Committee. How would you approach it? Let's say that monkeypox does become a thing, because it's, for some reason, some powers out there are trying to push that to be a thing. How would you handle a pandemic-like situation like we had in March of 2020? How would you handle approaching that? How do you think we did as a county, as a whole in approaching it? And really, like, the bottom line is, what would you advocate for, and how would you do that?
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Osnes?
I don't think the doctor has to go through another interview process where we're asking questions and he's answering them. He has done that with the administrator and you and Supervisor Telejohn, and it's not our decision to have him have to go through that again. And if we start doing it now, where are we going to stop in the future?
I believe some very specific and short questions are appropriate, and so I would like to ask Supervisor Burning to reframe his question to be more specific.
Yes, I will. When you're making your decisions when it comes to pandemic-type situations, would you be willing to look further than just the situation at hand medically to ensure that the effects of whatever is requested, like by medical professionals, don't spill over and affect the community at large? For example, shutting down an entire county or state to stop something, how would you handle that? And I guess I would turn to you. And would you be willing to look further than just stopping a sickness or a virus?
Yes, I would be. My main responsibility will be the medical area and how that would impact public health as a whole. But I also do have a responsibility in looking past what the ramifications would be of, say, shutting down an entire county, looking at the financial aspect, the other non-public health aspects too. So my responsibility would be to give you the information from a public health aspect on the safety of your decisions. But I would also appreciate things that are non-medical. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. And then would you also help advocate for allowing people to continue to make their choices rather than overarching authority stopping people from moving? And say, for instance, I had to be issued papers by my company to move around the state. I've never heard of that before, except for crazy situations across the world. Would you be one that would help us stand tall for us and make sure that, I guess, liberty to move about is left up to the individual and not necessarily a governing authority or body?
It's not, if I may interject, some of that may much depends on circumstances and context. So I'm not sure that's necessarily a fair question to ask, with all due respect, but I would leave it to Dr. Anwar if he would like to make any comments.
I guess if I may, Doctor, and I appreciate you're coming up on the hot seat, so thank you so much for doing that. It's not easy to put your name out there and be in the public, so thank you for taking some of these questions that you're going to field from us. I guess let me just add to it that...
Point of order, Mr. Chair. I thought this was supposed to be a short question.
I did ask for a short, very specific question, and Supervisor Burning, I would respectfully ask that you rephrase and make it short and specific.
I'll let you answer the original question, and I'll just leave it up to your, if you want to do that or not.
No problem. I appreciate you asking, and I know it does take bravery to ask a question like that in a room full of diversity. I am a staunch believer that people should have the choice. That being said, I can't go an absolute yes, people should have the choice, or yes, government should have the choice. I think my viewpoint is it should be somewhere in the middle so that the greater good can be served. So I do believe in people having a choice, but if it's going to cause a harm to the greater good, then I think government should have some responsibility as well too. We're all on a spectrum here, so I believe in my spectrum, I'm somewhere in the middle between government authority and individual autonomy. Does that answer your question?
Supervisor Shirley?
I guess I would like to know, since you've been in St. Croix County for 6 years, how would you rate how our response was to the pandemic?
I think given the situation that was occurring, not just in St. Croix County, but in the world and in the U.S., I think you handled it very well. In hindsight, in hindsight, I would say everything is 2020. But just looking at St. Croix County, when I compare it to other countries or other areas of this country, I think it did very well.
Supervisor Adams?
Dr. Anwar, I appreciate your opening statement, and it was very clear and cogent. In fact, you answered several of my questions, so let me just hit you up on a couple more. How did you come to apply for this job?
I was actually helping Bob Roret, and Bob, I don't know if I'm saying your last name correctly or not, so forgive me if I am, but he reached out to Western Wisconsin Health for a proposal that ended up not being as successful as we thought. That was my first exposure to the Department of Health and Human Services outside of renewing my passport across the hall there. And that's when I heard of a vacancy. And from that, I was also able to talk to Dr. McGinnis as well, too. And then at our hospital, we also have someone that used to be on this board, Chris Babbitt. I'm not sure if any of you are aware of him, but after I've learned more information and learned about the vacancy and also learned that there was no other physician in the application pool, I felt I had a duty to apply, and I felt I could really add to your knowledge base and help the board go to the next level in terms of governance.
And congratulations on your position of being the chief of staff at the clinic. That's outstanding. And in looking at various medical websites, there are several doctors that have your same name, and some of those doctors have practices in Arizona and Virginia. Is that you, or are you strictly here in Wisconsin, St. Croix County?
Strictly here in Wisconsin. I don't believe my licenses in Virginia are active anymore. And I think the Arizona person is someone else by the same name.
All right. And on that same vein, there's also another doctor with the same name that when you go and look on various medical doctor websites, that particular doctor has a 2.2 rating. Would you be aware of that? Is that you, or is that another doctor, Anwar?
I am not aware of that. The only rating I have been following actively is Western Wisconsin Health's rating. I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe when doctors have the same name, that these sites that collect reviews aggregate the reviews, and they don't differentiate which Faisal Anwar is in Arizona from the Virginia Faisal Anwar. So I think that gets mixed up. I did Google myself and saw some of those poor reviews. One was about a botched rhinoplasty. I do not perform rhinoplasties, so Once I read that one, I thought, okay, must be something wrong.
Okay. Outstanding. And then I understand that you fly, is that correct?
I used to fly. So to clarify that, about a few years ago, I started working on my private pilot's license, and I did accrue a good amount of hours until I found out that I have a very mild form of colorblindness, red-green colorblindness, just enough that I would not qualify to be a pilot. So ever since then, I take flight classes, but I will not be a pilot, and I'm okay with that.
All right. Okay, Doctor, I appreciate that. Thank you.
The questions, Supervisor Carlson?
Thank you. The last Health and Human Services Committee, they recommended that we have someone at Health and Human Services have the authority to mandate, wear masks, say what businesses are shut down, and quarantine. Would you, if you were on that board, would you have also made the same recommendation or not?
In hindsight, I would have. And just to give some context so that everyone understands my response, in the pandemic, I know a lot of you have lost friends and family. I've also lost family from COVID-19 as recently as about a year ago. Ever since that, and that has affected me deeply, it has changed my own views on masking, on the vaccination. So just to give you context that it wasn't the pandemic itself, but also a close family relative that had an impact on my decision.
Do you believe that what did occur then made things better or worse as the pandemic went along after the vote was shot down?
The vote shot down meaning not...
The vote to have someone in Health and Human Services have the authority to do mandates and such. Do you believe that things would have been better for St. Croix County if the vote would have passed?
I think so. It's hard for me to hypothesize, but I think so.
Supervisor Leaf.
Dr. Anwar, you mentioned working with Bob on the project with Western Wisconsin Health. I'm interested in, it was with the mental health and addiction Kitty Rhodes Center that unfortunately we didn't get the grant for. Now that we're in endemic times, I can see the Health and Human Services Board doing more of this kind of work. Can you describe your experience with mental health and addiction issues?
Of course. I do have much more experience in my residency. At Western Wisconsin Health, ever since I started, I've become a bit more administrative in terms of chief of staff duties. I mainly work there as a hospitalist, so my exposure to both mental health as well as substance abuse is when patients from the emergency room or from clinic are admitted to the hospital and have to undergo substance withdrawal or drug withdrawal. It also involves me consulting with telehealth mental health services. We don't have an inpatient psych unit, but whenever we are unable to place patients that are at risk of harming themselves or others, we do take care of them in our inpatient unit. So my experience has been in terms of treating them as their attending physician, but also consulting with a psychiatrist.
Other questions? Any other, Supervisor Cook?
I just want to thank you, Dr. Anwar, for coming in and answering questions. I think for many supervisors who have questions, it's been very helpful. And also just to highlight, I think what I personally feel is our role in this process. The county administrator is able to make an appointment, and there was an interview by the chair per the county administrator's request, I believe, as a part of that process. I think, anytime we have an advisory board, we're not all going to agree with the decision that everybody on that advisory board has on every question that comes before us, and that's why it's advisory. It's our job as supervisors to ultimately make the decisions that we're talking about. So what I can appreciate about Dr. Anwar is that looking at someone to serve on the HHS board that has experience in the medical area. And as he just stated, he's re-elected chief of staff. I think it speaks to his experience. It speaks to his skill and his ability to offer his opinion or his perspective as part of that HHS board. So again, we have a lot of advisory committees, and as supervisors, we don't always agree with what everybody says on that committee as individual members, but I think their purpose is to provide that skill and that knowledge, and then ultimately those decisions come to us. So thank you again, Dr. Anwar, for answering questions. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Supervisor Hanson?
I would dovetail what Supervisor Cook had said. I deeply appreciate you coming and talking, although I feel that it's a unfortunate thing that you were asked to answer questions, that the vetting process, the traditional vetting process of our county board should have stood. And I would urge you, if you are approved by this board, to expand the communication. Our public health ordinance that was mentioned here in the question to you it failed, and it could be that it failed because it wasn't communicated clearly enough what it represented and what it stood for. The fact that we don't have a public health ordinance leaves our community vulnerable. It was not the things that it was made out to be in public, and it was highly politicized, largely, I think, due to the fears of the pandemic, and it's something that is still hanging over the heads of this board, and I think that's unfortunate too.
Order, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Is this a question, or are we making statements?
Yeah, actually, I think there's a lot of different opinions about the ordinance, so to speak, and I think it would be best for us to let that lie and try to deal specifically with Dr. Anwar and his qualifications for this appointment.
Very good. Thank you for coming.
Other questions or discussion? Supervisor Ramberg.
Does this position require an MD, medical?
Yes, I can answer that question. So the statute does indicate that it has to be a physician, which is defined under statute as an individual possessing the degree of Doctor of Medicine or Doctor of Osteopathy, or an equivalent degree as determined by the Medical Examining Board, and holding a license granted by that Medical Examining Board.
Other questions or discussion? Okay, seeing none, I believe that we're ready to vote on this appointment.
If I may give a closing statement?
Yes,
30
you
seconds.
absolutely may.
Okay. Thank you all for your consideration. It truly is a privilege to be up here and to be considered for this position. I do want you to vote from your heart. I may not be the best fit for this position, and I don't want you to think to be swayed by me or anyone else. If you think I'm the right person for the job, then by all means vote for me. If you don't think I'm the best person, then please don't vote for me, because I want you to be as comfortable having me in the position as I would be comfortable being in that position. Thank you.
Let's vote. Appears that motion passes. Congratulations, and thank you for being here tonight, Dr. Anwar. And I almost want to apologize for a second interview, but I believe it was worthwhile. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
No apology needed. Thank you all.
Okay, we're going to move on to our second business item, resolution amending personnel policy. Do you have a motion?
I'll move to approve.
By Supervisor Cook. Do we have a second? Supervisor Carlson. Supervisor Cook?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you all know, at the last board meeting, this item was sent back to the Administration Committee for further conversation. I probably will turn it over to Administrator Witt for any detail, but if you read through the packet, you'll notice that basically at the core, the change basically it stops the long-term sick leave bank from happening to any of our current employees. Essentially, we're looking at future employees, but Administrator Witt can probably provide more specific detail about that.
Yeah, if you'd like to know the details. Or if not, just tune me out. So we made a change in philosophy from the proposal that we had last time where it was a prorated payout with diminishing values. We simplified it in that all current employees, the long-term sick pay payout remains the same. And then there's no payout for any employee hired after today, if you guys approve the policy change. So there's pros and cons to the shift in methodology. One of the pros are that in the long term, it has a reduced cost for the county because under the old proposal, we were continuing to pay out for all employees in perpetuity until the policy changed again. Under this scenario, it does eliminate it. So anyone hired after today, then there's no payout. So long term, that's a better benefit, a lower cost for the county. In the short term, though, it does prolong the cost that we have. And so as you'll see further down on the agenda, we have a fund balance transfer that'll help cover that, bridge that gap to the point where the grandfathered employees are starting to be outnumbered by the new employees coming on board. So there's pros and cons to the policy change, but it's more simplified and more in line with what the employees that you've heard from over the past couple months have been asking for.
Questions, Supervisor Hanson?
Sure. Administrator Witt, what I can't understand having read this is if an employee was hired, say, last month, will they be able to roll over their long-term sick bank from now until the time that they retire?
Yes.
Supervisor Leaf?
I had a question about point 8, the section 8, and the comment, I didn't see the grandfathering in there about a rolling over, or am I just missing it?
Are you talking about the 96 hours?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a mathematical thing. It provides no purpose. So that was actually, the policy used to be that you could only roll 96 hours and you had to make an annual election. So at some point, we eliminated that and changed the policy that anything over 320 hours automatically rolls in. So whether you manually move 96 hours over or it exceeds the cap and it automatically rolls over, the hours don't go anywhere. There's only one place for them to go, and that's into the long-term sick bank, or they get paid out as PTO. So really, you're doubling up on the methodology of putting the hours in, which was unnecessary. It's just an administrative task that's no longer needed. And I can prove it by math.
That's fine, I don't need to go there, but I was just making sure, because I want to be crystal clear that all the language in here is, I mean, I understand, I just want it to be crystal clear, so.
Yep. So the part that we're grandfathering is the long-term sick leave bank payout. That is grandfathered under the current terms.
Supervisor Fiedler?
As I understand it, this amendment to our personnel policy will have roughly a $10 million impact on our budget over a course of years. $10 million. I and this board are very supportive of our employees. We've shown that time and again. Our personnel policies are very generous, very generous. But the fact that there was, many years ago, a personnel benefit put into the personnel packet for an employee doesn't mean it's a contract. We could fire everybody tomorrow. We could reduce their pay tomorrow. We could do anything we wanted with a personnel manual tomorrow. This isn't locked in concrete. I'd have just a couple of questions for the administrator. Am I basically correct that this is a $10 million item?
Yeah, we're paying out roughly $500,000 a year, and with the grandfathering, that's going to continue for the next 20 to 30 years. So yes, I would estimate anywhere from 8 to 10 million is what it'll cost the county.
Okay, in our neighboring counties, or western Wisconsin that you're aware of, do other counties have as generous a policy as this, or if they have changed it, have they changed it some time ago?
Yeah, our current policy, I had done a survey when we looked at changing this policy. We had the most generous policy under the current terms. Most of the other counties that I surveyed had eliminated this back around 2012, right after Act 11. They had phased out, and they had used this methodology for phase out. They had grandfathered any current employees. They were just 10 years ahead of us.
And you may have answered this in part from some of the other questions, but could you quickly outline what our senior employees get now in annual leave and sick benefits, and So how many days would a 20-year employee get today?
Yeah, so we have a fairly generous PTO policy, which was created a couple of decades ago, several decades ago, I think, where it combined the sick leave and vacation time. So they get just one time, they get a PTO time. So a 20-year employee gets, it's a multiplier based upon their hours, but if you work 80 hours in a pay period, it comes out to about 11.072 hours at the maximum accrual rate, which is about 36 days per year of PTO time that's accrued. So if you don't use all of that PTO time, we accrue it into a bank up to 320 hours that you can accrue in your bank. Any hours over 320 hours roll over into this long-term sick leave bank. The long-term sick leave bank has no cap. It can continue to accrue. And that was one of the issues that we've addressed with why we need to change this policy, is because we have employees that have accrued thousands of hours in there and then get paid out at their final pay rate for that. That long-term sick leave bank is only usable if you have a sickness that lasts 3 days or longer. You can then draw off the long-term sick bank instead of using your PTO time. So PTO time is paid out at the time of separation for all employees, no matter what the circumstances are. Long-term sick leave bank is only paid out at the time of retirement. So basically any separation once you've reached retirement age, people always classify it then as a retirement, so that they get that paid out, and that's paid out into a health insurance account that's only usable for health insurance purposes.
One final question, if I could. What would be the impact if we were to sunset this provision after 10 years? Would we have bought a full decade for our senior employees to plan for this? Would we then save $5 million if we made it roughly at 10 years? And would we then let all our other employees who should be coming under our new health care plan for their futures over those 10 years?
Correct, yeah. If you sunset the provision at 10 years out, you would cut that cost roughly in half, considering that there is an even distribution of retirements over the next 10 to 20 years of employees. Yeah, was there a second part to that I didn't answer? No. Okay.
Supervisor Hanson?
I think we should send it back to the administration committee and have them take a whack at that.
Are you making a motion, Supervisor Hanson?
I move we send that back to the administration committee and have them take a whack at that.
Is it second from Supervisor Anderson? So the motion on the floor is to send the policy back to the administration committee for further discussion, and there was a second. Discussion. Supervisor Shirley.
In our last meeting, when we sent it back to committee, I was reading this beforehand. I was a little disappointed. I think, when you look at especially 2.48 for annual options.
We're voting on sending it back to the committee.
That's correct. We're voting on, the motion on the floor is to send it back to the committee for further discussion.
Sorry, Ryan. That should be the subject matter, not the resolution itself.
Right, which is where I was getting to. What I would like to see when we come back would be either in the annual options or in another fashion. We have an election there to either do a cash payout or a donation option. I'd like to see something that we can either, employees can move those funds into an actual retirement account or an HSA, something to get those funds out if they want. Because in actuality, those hours sitting in sick bay are not accruing them interest. They're not gaining them anything. They would do better with it out of there, in my opinion.
If I could just interject on that issue, there's some IRS regulations that once it becomes electable, it becomes taxable, and that will actually increase the cost for the county. Not to cut off that part of it, but there's some reasons why we don't do that.
That is the motion. So the question is, do we send it back to the committee for further discussion and retooling or not? Okay, let's vote on the amended motion to send it back to the administration committee. It appears that motion fails. Okay, now we are back to the original motion to approve the change in the policy. Discussion, Supervisor Leaf.
So I wanted to piggyback off of what Supervisor Fiedler said. In your financial report, you said we've had 5 months of $1 million sales tax. So when we're talking about other counties and what they're able to afford, we're talking about a very different landscape between other western Wisconsin counties and St. Croix County. Just wanted to put that out there.
Other comments, discussion? Okay, Supervisor Fiedler?
I'll pick up where the discussion left off on the sunset and offer an amendment that would sunset this provision for the payout of long-term sick bank payouts after 10 years.
So there's a motion to amend to sunset after 10 years, second by Supervisor Barkalow. Discussion on the motion to amend to sunset. Supervisor Burning.
I think I need clarity on exactly what that means, because that is very broad. The motion is broad. It doesn't stick to any one particular part of of the resolution. So I would like clarity on that, please, where that would be.
Yeah, I appreciate the question, because I wanted to make sure that I explained what the ramifications of that change would be, so that you guys understand how that changes. And just on the other motion, where you guys kept it on the floor, and fully support if you guys want to amend it. I think it's really good, though, that we do resolve this issue and put it to rest, and stop having all the employees come here staring at me. Yeah, I doubt it. I do think it'd be good, though, for the county as an organization to get this resolved. So I do appreciate that. So the amendment, so to sunset it in 10 years. So what that means is, right now we're saying if you're a current employee, you're going to get paid out your long-term sick bank until you retire, whether that's 10 years from now, 15 years, 20 years from now. The sunset means if you're a current employee, you're going to get paid out that long-term sick leave bank as long as you retire prior to December 31st, 2032. So 10 years from now, the end of the year, I think it would be the date that we would put into the policy, as long as you retire by then. So there's people that benefit from that, and there's people then that are going to be short of that cutoff. So if you're a law enforcement and you're below the age of 40, you're not eligible to retire. You're not going to have reached the age of 50 retirement age prior to that date. So if you're below the age of 40, it doesn't help you at all. You're losing the long-term sick leave bank payout, or the age of 45 for a general employee. So does that clarify how that change impacts?
But will our new healthcare policy address that?
Yeah, so that's the direction that the county's moving. When we started talking about eliminating the long-term sick bank and the ability for the employees to have this lump of money for health insurance purposes, there was a question brought up about, well, what vehicle are we going to use? And so HR and administration have been looking at creating an HSA plan, a health savings account plan. In long term, that's going to be the vehicle that we want to provide for our employees to save money for their health insurance in retirement. So that plan coming on board in 2024 allows, 10 years then, or 8 more years of time for them to accumulate.
Supervisor Burning?
Is the HSA is currently not implemented, nor have we voted on actually implementing that, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that is not set in stone that that is what's going to happen.
It is not.
So I would think that prior to us amending this, which we can amend it at that time once we have something in place, which I think is more than just based on what we've discussed and gone back and forth on in admin. I agree with Supervisor Fiedler. It's a lot of money. But I think we need to have something in place for them prior to putting this in place, because what if 2 years from now, the next board doesn't move with the HSA? And that now we've pulled the rug out from under some people then that's not just. So that's my 2 cents on this motion.
Supervisor Fiedler? I'm sorry, Hanson. What am I thinking? I keep thinking of...
I'm going to be confused with somebody. That's an honor. First of all, I need to say I believe in the committee system, and I wish that we weren't doing the work of a committee, but if we're going to, then this is how we'll do it. I agree with Supervisor Burning that if we haven't replaced a benefit, we shouldn't take a benefit away, and I would encourage people to not vote for the sunset at this point, and eventually put another benefit in place and then modify this. It's good thinking, Paul.
Supervisor Anderson.
I'm going to move that we table the amendment until the time, the agenda item after we take up the HSA discussion.
The motion is to amend table the amendment that would, and second, that would amend the policy. So the motion then resulting motion on the floor would be the original motion.
Point of
if I
order.
have that correct.
Is this a table to a date uncertain or table for a date specific?
Are you postponing to a date certain, or are you postponing indefinitely?
I guess we don't have finalized what date we're going to review the HSA timeline, and correct me if or the HSA policy, correct me if I'm, you know the day? Can you tell me the day so I can postpone it to that day?
One more point of order, even though we're in the middle of a point of order. Can we table an amendment? I don't think we can. Can we table an amendment? Because I don't think we can table an amendment.
Point taken. I do not believe you can table an amendment. I think you need a vote on the amendment.
Sure glad you're here, Corporation Counsel. Okay, so we cannot table the amendment. So we need to vote on the amendment, and the amendment is to sunset the long-term sick bank after 10 years. I think we're ready to vote on that. Uh-oh.
Mr. Chair, can we
Okay.
get a point of clarification on what we're voting on here?
We're voting on an amendment to the original motion, which was to approve the policy as in your packet, and the amendment is to sunset the entire, or
Sunset the payout after 10 years. So there'd be 0 payouts if you retire after December 31st of 2032. So it maintains PTO payouts under the current policy. If you're currently employed with the county through the end of 2032, there'll be no payouts after 2032. And the amendment is the sunsetting to that date specific.
Okay, are you already clear on what we're voting on? Let's vote. Okay, the amendment does not pass. So now we're back to the original motion of approving the personnel policy as outlined in your packet. Is there any further discussion on the policy? Supervisor Otino.
Thank you. It just seems like, as far as Vice Chair Fiedler put forward, this is a very massive amount of money going forward. If we're going to sunset that, can't we sunset it maybe in another 2 stages instead of just 1 stage for 10 years? And as an example, my wife's a teacher for St. Paul Public Schools with over 30 years of service, and she got hired before the rule of 90, so she's going to have to work a few more years in order to get to that retirement. And they also kept that number at not that person's salary, but at $100 per day. And my question is, now 10 years from now, I'm making more money as an employee. Now, when I retire, is that the dollar value you're going to base my day's pay on? Because that could be another millions of dollars that we're dealing with.
Yeah, payout is based upon the final rate of pay.
Other comments? Supervisor Counter.
In your projections for that $10 million, did you base that on the projected potential pay for the payouts at those times?
Yeah, because you have a couple of factors influencing that. You have an increasing, if you look at the last few years, an increasing trajectory of the dollar amount of the payouts. But then you'll have less people coming into that pool, so it should flatten out. And then at some point, probably right around the year 15, it'll probably start declining. And so, yeah, that's factored in there, all very mathematically guessed.
Other comments? I believe we're ready to vote on the original motion. Oh. And that motion passes. Thank you. Let's move on to our third business item, resolution authorizing the fund balance transfer.
Move for approval?
We have a motion to approve. We have a second. Supervisor Osnes. Discussion. I guess we'll turn this over to either, well.
I'll turn it over to Administrator Witt. It's the money details that he loves to talk about, so.
I love to talk about them.
I know you do.
So every year we take a look after the audit is completed at our fund balance. We have a fund balance policy that says that we should maintain enough cash reserves, our unassigned fund balance, of roughly 35% of our general fund expenses, plus or minus 3%. So there's a range there, anywhere from 32 to 38%. And so when we have really good tax collection years, sales tax is what I mean, then we end up over. Also, departments come in under budget. So they don't keep that money in the department. That goes to our unassigned fund balance. And so we were roughly $3.8 million at the end of 2021 over our designated amount, so over the 38%. So we're over by that amount. So what we do every year then is we bring it back down to our policy limit, and we reassign those funds to areas where we think they can be beneficial. One of the main areas that I always recommend, you're going to hear this over and over, and for those supervisors that have heard this for years now, the KIP is where you should put the extra funds. You put the extra funds into the KIP because then you can make purchases with cash instead of borrowing. That saves the taxpayers because you don't have bond issuance costs and you don't have interest expense. Not all counties can do that. We have the luxury of being a county that's very successful, that we were able to do that. And this is one of the methodologies that we use to continually fund our KIP without having to borrow every single year like a lot of counties do. So this year, when I looked at the 3.8 million, I split it into 3 different areas in my recommendation. Really, I'll start with the debt service fund. So the debt service fund, I recommended 800,000 go into that. We had a small negative amount of 300-some thousand in the debt service fund. I actually think we missed a transfer from a year or two ago is how that happened. But this will resolve that, and it leaves a few $100,000 in the debt service fund, which provides the county administrator a little bit of flexibility when I put the budget together. If I want to bring that tax levy down just a little bit, it gives me the dollars to do that. Now, you have to understand, if you put money into the debt service fund, it's a one-way transfer. Other funds are a two-way transfer. You can pull it back out if you don't like it later on. When you put it into debt service, you can't take it back out of there. So once it's there, it's only going to be used for debt. The other recommendation that I had then is the RHS fund, and that's the Retirement Health Savings Account Fund. And so we had transferred about 1.3 million, I think, a couple of years ago into that. When we closed the HRA fund out, we had transferred that balance over here. We've drawn that amount down. We've been budgeting $250,000 into the RHS fund. That's for the payouts of this long-term sick bank that we just went over. But that 250 isn't sufficient. We've been running on average of 500,000. So we've been burning through the cash. And so this transfer of $2 million will make that fund solvent for the next, anywhere from 3 to 5 years probably, depending on how many retirements we have and what those balances are. So that kind of, takes the controversy out of it, at least for the next few years. That's why I recommended the transfer of this $2 million. Part of the reason we had the luxury of transferring that also and only transferring $1 million into the KIP fund is because we had taken the balance of the ARPA funds that were designated by the federal government, the U.S. Treasury, as lost revenues. We could designate $10 million as lost revenues. And we took the balance of what we had unassigned of $7.5 million and moved it into the KIP. So earlier this year, we had already moved a large chunk of money into the KIP. So I'm feeling comfortable with the balance that we have in our KIP right now. So what was ever left over is the $1 million recommendation to go into the KIP. So that's how I divvied up the $3.8 million recommendation.
Supervisor Hanson.
So what percentage does that leave us with in the fund?
38%.
Questions? Supervisor Ortino?
Yes, rather than put it into the KIP, is there ways we can use that money for roads, for healthcare, for any of the departments, instead of adding again to the KIP? Whereas this could maybe alleviate the talk of the wheel tax increase that keeps coming back in front of the group here. And you know my position on that wheel tax, so I would like to see something done that way if it's possible.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Vehicle registration fee is how the...
Yes, vehicle registration fee.
I was getting dirty looks from our highway commissioner in the back.
Oh, I know I'm going to hear this.
Yeah. So to answer your question, so my philosophy on cash reserves that we have is the one criteria I really have for you that I want to stress for you is one-time monies, not reoccurring monies. So if you take that $1 million, yes, you can put it somewhere else, but make sure you're doing it for a one-time expense. Otherwise, you create a structural deficit going into the next year. So if you say, okay, well, we're going to subsidize health insurance, well, that's fine, but the next year then the increase is going to be twice as big because I have to make up for the money that you subsidize plus the other money. If you just think the health insurance fund is too low, then yes, you can put it in there as additional cushion for high and low years. Yes, you can put the $1 million into the highway fund, and they will use it. I'm sure the highway commissioner can find a one-time project to spend $1 million on. So yes, there are other options for you.
Any other questions? Okay, we're ready to vote on the original motion. And that's approved. Thank you. So the last business item I put on the agenda, I think a lot of you are aware that a number of us attended a recent Wisconsin Counties Association annual conference in Wisconsin Dells. And so I thought it would be important for us to at least have the opportunity to bring some of that information back and share it with the board. You want to take 5 minutes, and that's probably a good idea given the rest of the agenda. So let's get back about a little after 6:30. All right, let's reconvene here so we can keep moving. Okay, this last, I'll say it again, this last business item was really more of an informational piece. The number of us attended the Wisconsin Counties Association conference a couple of weeks ago, and I wanted to make sure that we had the opportunity to bring some of that information back and share it with the rest of the board. So I'm just going to go kick it off, go first, and then I'll kind of open it up to other attendees and share whatever you feel. And I'll admit, I was the skeptic. I was very skeptical of the association and the whole thing. Every time I get a really, really high-end magazine from a lobbying group, it's like a big red flag. Right, so, and I was involved in a prior life in a national trade organization out in Washington, D.C., so I was very exposed to all the lobbying efforts. And so I was the skeptic. So I thought, okay, I got to go to this conference. I got to see what it's all about. Make sure it's worthwhile and a worthwhile effort for our county. And I can say now that it was very worthwhile. And the one thing that I was most interested in is how do they measure their success? Okay, they're a lobbying organization. How do we know that they're successful on our behalf? So I was very pleased that one of the presentations, they actually did put up a list of all the different legislative efforts and successes that they have had in the past year. So I was very glad to see that. And so for the amount of dues that we pay is not that much, it's worthwhile. So a couple odds and ends. First of all, on Sunday, they had a business meeting of the county board chairs, and we voted on a variety of resolutions. And I was absolutely shocked at the overwhelming support of having the state unilaterally increase levy limits. I was one of only maybe 3 or 4 no votes on that, and I was really surprised at that. And I know certain counties may be in trouble, but my philosophy, and voting no at least, was that if you've got good reason to increase taxes, then you better go to the taxpayer and ask them to make sure that it's okay and have them involved in that conversation, rather than having the ability to unilaterally increase taxes without any taxpayer input. So I did vote no on that. But the other thing that I heard, which I thought made a whole lot more sense as a different approach, would be to lobby to increase state funding for mandated programs. So we have all these programs that were required, services required to perform. Our expenses go up, but the state's not going to give us any more money, so we got to figure out how we're going to provide that service. So that seemed to me a lot more logical in terms of lobbying. A couple of other quick odds and ends. There was a lot of recommendations to review mandated discretionary services. So I was kind of proud of that, and I thought, okay, we're doing that. There's a lot of different approaches that counties are taking in that, but there was a definite recommendation that this is really a good exercise to do, so that really confirmed what we're doing has a lot of value. Another suggestion may be to ask some of our legislators to come in periodically to give us a little bit of an update on what's going on in Madison and how that may impact our county in the future. And also, a suggestion I thought was really good was a lot of counties are providing more coordination with their EDCs, their economic development corporations, to attract new business and expanded business. And I think that's something that we really should consider doing more of. Other than that, I at least want to take the opportunity to thank the supervisors that did go to the conference. So I'll just kind of open it up to any of you if you have comments or any nuggets of things that you'd like to share with the board. Supervisor Van Summeren.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm a newbie at this, as many of you know, so this was my first convention. And I've gone to conventions for electric co-ops and for John Deere company, and this was ranked right up there with some of the better ones. They did a very fine job. I'm not just talking about the good times, I'm talking, because there were a lot of those, but I'm talking about the breakout sessions. Some of those are very interesting. I wish they had offered some of them more than once so we could have picked them up, and I understand we can get them online, although I haven't found them online yet. But I guess someplace they might be hidden. But it was very good, and here, this attests to it. So the second day, my wife came with me, by the way, and the second day, there was nothing much for the women to do that second half a day. So she came along with me to 3 breakout sessions, and she said that if we go again, if we would go again another year, she would like to attend all the breakout sessions. She found them that interesting. She has no skin in the game. I thought, that's pretty good. They must be reaching out to people. So I would encourage everyone who did not go, and those who did go, to return again. It's just that kind of a, when you see that many people, and you have the opportunity to talk to them, because that was part of the better part of it. We could speak with people and then get to know them. You realize we're not in this alone. Our problems are their problems too, and so we're kind of all in this together. So very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Ramberg.
Yes, thank you. I also went and I went to 6 breakout sessions, and of course you could only go to 1, and there's 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. So again, it'd be nice to go to more than that, but we split up and we all went to different ones. And one of the things I've heard before, but it hit me that, a lot of these I wasn't that interested in, but I went. But I found that if you're not in on it, you're down on it. And I was down on it until I sat there. And there was some different terms that I learned. And also, who you sit next to at the lunches are also informative. It's not just at the, to absorb it at the conference. It could be in the hallway or whatnot. But yes, very informative. Thank you.
Anyone else? Supervisor Fiedler.
I also found it a very good conference. This is my 4th or 5th one I think I've been to, and they've all been great. Just a couple quick bullets. I went to one on county organization, and my takeaway was virtually every other county has more supervisors than we do and more committees than we do. And I stood up and I mentioned to them we had 19 and 5 committees, including our Health and Human Services Board, and we had a consent calendar for items that were routine. And people were just astonished that we had that. I must have had a half a dozen people come up to you afterward. How do you do it with 5 committees? I mean, isn't it, question, and then what's on the consent calendar? How do you get there? Well, of course, I said, well, our chairman works with our administrator and solicits views if he knows somebody's got an interest in it. But anybody can withdraw an item, and it gets full debate, full democracy. And I think a lot of counties are going to have consent calendars in the future. Just one quick item on county funding and expenses program. The big issue that we're facing for Wisconsin in the future, and many of you have heard me say this before, is our demographic loss of people. We're going to be 130,000 people short in 10 years, and that's going to affect every single thing we do. We're lucky in St. Croix County, we're growing, but everybody north and east of us is failing, and we have to really understand that. Emergency management was another program. Actually, in our bylaws, our Public Protection and Judiciary Committee is our Emergency Management Committee. We haven't done anything on that. I've been on that committee for years now, and my fault that we maybe haven't done it. But one of the suggestions, heavy suggestions, was, and I think Supervisor Adams will probably agree with this, that we should hold some exercises, be they tabletop or field exercises, to at least be sure that our critical people in the county and perhaps municipalities are all working together. At least we've met once, so we know what's going on. It was a little vague to me also, but I think that our chairman is actually the person who, by statute, is ultimately responsible for everything. And so you've got one committee that is got the bylaws responsibility, but the state law has got, our chairman has got the responsibility. So we just should iron that out. So if we have a terrific tornado or flood or other natural disaster, we've at least got a head start on it and do this. The last thing I'll mention is they had a program on wicked problems, really, really tough problems. Day to day we solve problems, but what do we do with the wicked problems? And I'll be honest, the answers weren't anything that will shock any of us, but it was like, try hard to understand where the other person's coming from. Be honest. Know your facts, and a whole bunch of things like that. And I just found it a very good refresher on how we have to just go about doing business sometimes on hard issues. Thank you.
Supervisor Cook?
I'll keep mine short because a lot of folks have already mentioned important outcomes. I guess one of my takeaways was just how really fortunate we are to live in St. Croix County. We're in a really strong economic position here. A lot of counties are very envious of where we are at from talking with other colleagues from across the state. So that was definitely a takeaway. There's a lot of issues that we're working on, that other people are working on, but something I left the conference thinking was a lot of folks were trying to solve those by engaging their community partners. And I think that's something that we can really keep doing as well as a county. And we have a lot of really large issues that we've been talking about for a long time. But I think if we can connect with our community partners who may be experts in the field or can maybe help us out and give us some advice, as well as our community itself and the public, then maybe we can solve those. Thank you.
Supervisor Hanson?
First, I'd say that it was 4 years ago that Fiedler retooled the consent agenda and made it what it is, so thank you for that, Bob. It really does work great, and you need to have the credit for that. I went to a session on the morning of the second day that opened my eyes to something that I couldn't believe is actually going to affect us as much as it is. The session was called Privacy versus Public Record Finds That It Could Affect Your County. And I went because the chairman was asking us to each consider going to different sessions. So I went to this one because other people were going to other sessions, and so I was not sure what I was going to get. But what this has to do with is security of judges. Back, I don't know if you remember, but in July of 2020, there was an attempt on Judge Esther Salas's life, and instead of getting her, the murderer killed her son, whose name was Daniel Andrel. And because of that, there was a federal law, S-2340, the Daniel Andrel Judicial Security and Privacy Act of 2021. And that's going to affect us in a tremendous way because it is requiring all counties in the United States of America to pass, all states to pass a law that requires all counties to redact records because the way that killer found her house was through public land records. Just got her public record and found her address, went to the house and shot her son when he answered the door. So now what that's going to do, some of these states, what they're doing is expanding the scope, including law enforcement and in some cases elected officials. It sounds like it's great. On the surface, it sounds like it is, but it's also having the effect of being enormously expensive, and the people who are being protected then can't get titles done for title searches, they can't get wedding licenses, and they can't get passports because all of their public records are redacted. So there's some real problems with this. And because Wisconsin hasn't passed their law yet, it hasn't affected us. But when they do, then there's a very short period of time, I think it's just within 3 months, that all of that needs to be done. Fortunately, Beth Pabst is on top of it. She knows that it's coming, but we're going to have to fund it when it happens. So heads up. And that's what I learned.
Supervisor Telejohn?
Yeah, I think I attended half a dozen workshops, and all of them were pretty interesting. And it's not just some leader from an industry leading these workshops, it's other counties leading some of these workshops and listening to what the other counties have done in finding solutions. Especially one was interested in is housing and homelessness and how Washington County has attacked that. Others was youth in care with complex needs, how we can help the youth in their mental health issues and so forth. It's just things you don't think about. And it's just like somebody else said, sitting at the luncheon table and having discussions with other county people that you've never met before and finding out how they do things, or just the conversations. And yeah, it was This is my second conference, and it was well worth it. I'll go again.
Anyone else, other comments? Supervisor Osnes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Everybody else, I think, basically has said what I've said. This was the 12th conference that I attended. Every year it's gotten better and better. Talking with WCA staff, they quit counting at 950 elected officials. That didn't include spouses that were down there. That didn't include folks like Heather or Bob or Ken or anybody else. They figured there's well over 1,300 employees or attendees. It gets better all the time. One of the things they've done, there were 4 videotapes that have been made, and with the help of our county chair, if you guys go to the WCA, Wisconsin County Association's website, this will be the first thing that'll come up, and if you click on that view, that'll list all the material that was used down there. Part of that printed stuff, I sent out a copy for you. So every breakout session had a PowerPoint session. That's included on these. You might want, for folks that didn't go, folks that did go, there's some great information for a good educational experience for everybody that's there. Folks at home that might be interested in stuff, you can see that as well. You can go scroll all the way down to the bottom. TV network, we're not quite down that far. The television station was in. They had, I think, 4 different breakout sessions that they videotaped. If you want to get in on those, you can see those as well. WCA right now, I will let you know, I was on the past 2 years, I was part of the program committee. We've already started getting ready for next year, believe it or not. They don't take a break. They do an outstanding job. One of the other things that I think they do very, very well is the huge room with the exhibitors that come in and all the extra information that's out there for us too. So, but I want to thank all our new supervisors. This is the first time that we've had this many folks down there, and I appreciate you all taking the time to go. And I hope you had a good time and a good learning experience. So, thank you.
Any other comments? Since we had our little Narcan training, I'll leave you with one fact that kind of floored me. 80% of those with addiction issues, those issues stem from mental health issues. That kind of floored me. So I thought, in our efforts to address mental health issues, certainly somewhere down the road may help with some of our addiction issues. Okay. Anybody have any questions before I move on real quick? Okay. Let's move on to our annual department reports. Child Support Department Annual Report. Lisa.
First of all, I'd like to thank Chad for sitting in for me. I was in Madison. I just got back. So I'm here. Relieved him. I'm not going to dwell on a whole lot of things here. You can, you know what our department does. Just a couple key points. You know, we initiate administrative and judicial actions. We establish paternity and child support obligation and take necessary action to enforce court orders. That's what kind of our program summary is. We have received a total of $15.2 million in collections from July 1st, 2021 through June 30th of 2022. That's the funds that have passed through our department. So we're doing very good. It's about 3.81 per quarter. And our total caseload right now is 4,319, and that's including non-enforcement cases, which is divorces that haven't asked for our services. So our goals and objectives that we received, we got the 2021 Certificate of Excellence Award for meeting all 4 performance measures. Buffalo County, which I'm the coordinator for Buffalo, and Pepin County also for their child support agency, also received the reward. And we also received the Certificate of Outstanding Achievement for 3 of the performance measures exceeding those performance measures. So doing pretty good. Couldn't have done it without the hard work of our staff. We've had some turnover. We are fully staffed as of right now, but we lost 3 good workers, and now we're fully staffed with Ariana just starting just this week. And then we have finished our electronic scanning. We have emptied our storage unit, so we kind of got that going thanks to Jessica in our office, our customer service rep. She worked diligently to get that cleaned out before September. And we, as an agency and all staff, including Corp Counsel, are on many committees at the state. Major one right now is the the modernization, so trying to get out of our old, black and white screen, or black and green screen to a more of a web-based system. So that should be coming within hopefully 3 to 5 years. We're actually ahead of the game there, so that was kind of nice. So then some of the things that we are working on, we haven't got our child support court day established yet. Judge Black wants the child support court day. We just, with the COVID and the pandemic, we just haven't gotten together to get that done. I think a big thing was, justice services, that's been a big thing. We're involved in that. Actually, Heather Jensen and I are going to meet with Phil Gawley this week to help write an article for the Counties Association magazine. So that's going to be a good thing that we're going to be involved with. We attend the Domestic Violence Justice Services Family Committee. We're on that committee, so we're helping, with our collaboration with Turning Point and all of the Sheriff's Department and Human Services and Behavioral Health. So we're going to be a strategic plan going there. We have done some strategic planning based on the county's full strategic plans. So we've developed processes to fax all of our notices to employers or income withholding notices, medical support notices to alleviate some of the postal and mailing paper. We have multiple staff that reviewed our internal processes and our customer service process through the call center in Milwaukee and kind of made some improvements there. We're trying to get it more consistent throughout the state, the 5 counties that are with the call center. And we've improved our customer service information by creating additional handouts, QR codes, additional packets that we give to individuals. The newest thing is I was in Madison for the SAVES grant. Wisconsin was awarded $1.5 million for a domestic violence grant. It's called the Safe Access for Victims Economic Security. Wisconsin has Ray LCO in Hayward got $1.5 million also. And so we're working as a collaboration. So St. Croix County, Kenosha County, and Brown County received an award to be part of the Wisconsin, it's called WINS, is what they have, the Wisconsin Network for Safety. So we're a demonstration site for creating, it's a 5-year grant, hopefully a fully funded position within the Child Support Agency to help victims with domestic violence issues, get them into the Child Support Office, get them some resources, collaborate with Turning Point and different agencies, such as Justice Services and Health and Human Services, Behavioral Health, all of those different agencies. We're going to be working with Luann Berger in Pierce County because River Falls has St. Croix Pierce County. Because I am coordinating with Buffalo and Pepin, we'll be involved with the Wisconsin Domestic Violence Task Force and the coalition down in Alma in the Buffalo-Trempealeau area. And so this is a good opportunity for us, and I will keep laughing because I've been up since 4 this morning driving to Madison and back. So does anyone have any questions? I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Quick one for you.
Yes.
Could you explain to the board some of the projects and the work that you're doing, partnering with some of the counties, helping them out with some of the things that we've done in the past?
Well, we offer our services to any surrounding county, any county in Wisconsin. Chad is a big person. He's on the WCSA board, so a lot of other counties contact him for services. He goes to Eau Claire for training, Buffalo and Pepin, obviously. We do collaboration with Pierce County. We have cases that we exchange if there's a conflict of interest. Dunn County and Eau Claire County, we work very well collaborating. And when someone is gone and a county needs financial services, they need accounting services, they need someone to do their interstate casework, we're the first ones to always volunteer to help other counties. And it's a back and forth. We are, again, working with Justice Services and Behavioral Health. Cara Renegans has a little home in our office, so we have her as a resource for any individual that comes into the office and needs some assistance or some directive to need help here, need help there. Working with, every other department. We've met with Turning Point twice now. They're going to come in and do an in-person training to our office. And just being on the Bureau of Child Support committees, they've asked for volunteers. So Heather Jensen is on the intervention committee, and Mel is on the modernization committee to help. What do we want our new system to do for us? So the system should be created to direct us what needs to be done. And so we're not wasting time on cases that we don't need to do work on. It's focusing on those those high cases that need some more, attention than others. Along with the SAVES grant, we are going to be working with the Alma Center in Milwaukee so that the perpetrators of any domestic violence also get some help. So we're going to be working closely with them. I'm not sure, there's a place in River Falls that I think Judge Vlack works with for domestic violence cases to get some additional services or get some counseling or finding out what is the issue, the main core issue in someone, in why are they acting this way, and trying to get more of a family, more of a feel of family. Today I learned that Wisconsin is the highest 50-50 shared placement and custody state in the nation. So we have the highest percentage of cases that parents share placement and custody. And so that was amazing. I mean, but then again, you have 80 victims that passed away in the last year that were victims of domestic violence. So the youngest being 3 months old and the oldest being 77 years old. So learned some kind of new things today. We had Connie Chesnick from the state come and speak, and we also had the secretary come in and speak with us. So just we're spreading our wings and trying to get things going.
And Mr. Chair, I think that goes to show, again, here's another area with great staff from St. Croix County that's willing to go out and help other counties. We've got a good working partner relationship with that one, and that's something that we should be very, very proud of, and very, very proud of each and every one of our employees for a great job well done.
Customer service was your #1 priority in St. Croix County for our strategic plan that I focused on this year. So we kind of stepped it up, and all the staff are wonderful. And any one of us will answer questions if you have. So if you want to stop in or call or chat or email, we're all available. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Okay, we get to move on to Clerk of Court, Christy.
Good evening, everyone. I am Christy Severson. Should I start it like I do my jury trials? My jury orientation. Okay, so I am pleased to present my 2021, 2022. I'll have information from both years just because we're so late into 2022 and a lot of things kind of overlap into both. So, again, probably our greatest accomplishment is the success we've had in the state debt collection program, which means money for the county. We started in 2018, December of 2018. Since then, we've collected, to date, 1.3, almost 1.4 million. Last year was our biggest year by far, 540,000. So a lot of that money is retained by the county. Some does go to the state, some goes for restitution. But I'm very proud of my team, Jamie Foley, Cheryl Harmon, and Jessica Larson. We also completed our technology upgrades for the courtrooms and hearing rooms in 2021. This helps unify the technology and functionality of the different systems that we use so that it's consistent between courtrooms, because all courtrooms use Zoom and other types of technology pretty much every day. To have them work consistently when I'm putting different clerks in different courtrooms so that it's a lot more streamlined. I have to thank John Allegro and the IT staff, as well as Jim Ellsbury and the facilities team for all of their assistance during this. And of course, my staff who do their very best to troubleshoot and make things work on very short notice, and a lot of times while court is in session. So our challenges for 2021 and into 2022 are recruitment, training, and retaining knowledgeable staff. We lost 6 of 12 court clerks from May to December of last year. We were only able to hire 3. So during that time frame, we hired 5 new in early 2020. One of those has already resigned. We've had 4 resignations in 2022 so far, including one of our new hires from 2021. And in addition, we had a supervisor with an extended FMLA leave and 2 12-week FMLA leaves in 2022. So, good news, we had 1 new hire start yesterday. She came back for her 2nd day, hoping she comes back tomorrow. And we currently have 2 open positions in our critical area of criminal and courtroom clerking. So working on those challenges, but we greatly appreciate the assistance from Abby K and Abby L and Audrey and HR, as well as we got some temporary help from the judicial assistant staff covering our front counter when we were at our lowest staff-wise, and then former Clerk of Court employees were very gracious in helping us work remotely to try to get some of our work caught up during that time to keep us afloat. And my supervisors, Melissa Warwick and Shelley Fox, obviously going above and beyond in our efforts to recruit, train, and retain employees, as well as filling in all those holes that we've had over the last 17 months, and the staff that keeps plugging away. We also had some serious compression issues within the wage grid, which I think was part of the reason why we had difficulty recruiting. A compression study was done in 2022, and very thankful that all of our hourly employees were moved to higher steps. Thank you to Administrator Witt and obviously the county board for approving that resolution, and then as well as approving the additional position we added in 2022. I just hope we can have that position filled for more than a couple months coming up here shortly. A couple of shout outs I want to do. My 2 supervisors, Melissa Warwick and Shelley Fox. Mel just will have her 24 years with St. Croix County Clerk of Court tomorrow is her anniversary, and Shelley 15 years just on October 1st. So we couldn't run our department the way we do without those 2 very important key components. 2022, there was a child support interface, which, Chad's still here, that we implemented with our software, which is CCAP. It was developed to create an easier process for the child support agencies to interface directly with CCAP. It helps with productivity and efficiencies. And my family division clerk, Melissa Benoit, worked with child support and corp counsel to get all that smooth transition. So thank you. We also had, as if that hasn't been enough, a major upgrade of our case management system in late June 2022. So our CCAP is now called CCAP 3. It's extremely different from our old system. It's now cloud-based. And those of us who have been here since the inception of CCAP, which is our software, which was in 1993, we're having a little bit of a hard time trying to get memorizing what the new keystrokes are and how to find stuff in a new way, but we're learning and it's going pretty well. I just want to show my appreciation to all the county departments that we work with, judges, obviously, and the judicial assistants, the register and probate and her staff, court commissioners and staff, but then all the others, child support, corp counsel, sheriff's department, justice services, IT, register of deeds, district attorney, treasurer, county clerk, administration, finance, and facilities. I don't think I forgot anyone, but we work with them all so much. Did I say, if I didn't say justice services, those folks too. Thanks to the county board and the administration for your continued support. Most importantly, my staff. I wouldn't be here without them. They do a great job. I'm thankful for those that have stayed, and I'm happy to train the new ones to be as efficient and productive as my old staff. So, any of you want to step in and see what we do, feel free to come on up. And if anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Any questions? Great. Thank you, Christy.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, last but not least, medical examiner, Patty.
Hello, everybody. Winding it up with the wonderful topic of the medical examiner's office. So, how fun. We are super excited. Our CAT scan machine was installed last week. Our training is going to be in 2 weeks, and we should be up and running by October 22nd. So, we're very excited. Met with Polk County today, and we secured business with them, so we will be working on a plan with them. We also have about 5 other counties that want to start doing business with St. Croix County, so Director Witt is going to be very happy when the revenue starts coming in. We're very excited about this, and everybody is very excited to have the capacity to do forensics here in Wisconsin and not have to go to Minnesota for everything. This is really going to be a game changer for families. We'll be able to rule out trauma right away, which is really pretty awesome. We also have the capacity with the CAT scan system that we have to actually drop it right into our web-based report system. So it's going to really, really be nice. We're also working on some new processes and flow. There's a couple things that, as we were kind of practicing, how this was going to work, that we're already kind of changing how we're going to do process and flow. The scanner comes with standing order protocols, which is really nice, so we don't have to worry about that. Primarily, we're going to be focusing on head, chest, neck, and thoracic area. That's where we'll be ruling out trauma. And we don't have to, for a lot of our cases, we just want to rule out trauma, and we don't have to get that extended report, but we will have the scan and be able to get an extended report down the line if we should ever need one. So we won't have that constant bill with that there, which will be really nice. Our cooler will be installed in January. That's a 24-space cooler, which we're very excited about that. Will also help us with capacity. Our 3 up then will then be converted for decomp, which then will save the integrity of our facility. As we're moving forward, we are almost exactly where we were last year with our count. We're going to have 600 cases by the end of the week, and we had 2 pages today while this meeting was going on. So the count just keeps going up. We do anticipate being at 1,000 cases ourselves by 2025. So this here building process is really going to save St. Croix County a lot of money by having this CAT scan machine. As we move forward, our biggest obstacle really is the obesity problem. We did have a mechanical cot that we purchased quite a few years ago, but we are going to have to really look into having, right now we have the cot weighs 170 pounds, and then you put a 300-pound person on that. That's a big lift. It has mechanical lift, but not a mechanical lift to go in and out of our van. So, with help of the fire department and stuff, we're able to get stuff done. But there is a machine that ambulances have that it just comes out, hooks up to the ambulance, lifts it up, and really that piece of equipment is so important when it comes to really back injuries. So that's, what we're looking for in the future. Also, one of the biggest issues that we have really with our aging population is not knowing who their next of kin is. Because they may have lived here for decades, but their family isn't here. So they lived and worked and were part of our community, but as they started getting older, they became more isolated and really never really talked about who their family was, don't have anything set up for them. So I took a class with UW Extension, and I'm doing my first pilot program. Starts this week, actually, with UW Extension, and doing a free class for folks that want to do planning. And it's a whole program that was all set up by UW Extension, and just trying to get out there so that people at least have this stuff. We spend so much time, us, law enforcement, and we use a lot of resources trying to find out where next of kin is. This will save us in the long run a lot of money, again, in capacity of the work that we have to do to track folks down. So hopefully we can get more and more people to take this class and get this information out there so that we can start building on that there and save some time and energy. Other than that, we are very grateful for the board and those of you that helped us secure the CT machine and walk us through this journey. We are the first one in the state of Wisconsin to have this technology. And there are a lot of people that know that this is the wave of the future. The company that we bought the CT machine from said they cannot keep up with the amount of CT machines that they're selling now. And this is just in 1 year. And my brother works with Health Partners. They have like 30 CT machines that need to be turned over, and they see that this forensics is really going to be a big deal with the digital autopsy. So we're going to save our community members money. We're going to be able to give answers, and we are going to be in the front line paving forward for Western Wisconsin. So with that, life's great at the medical examiner's office.
Any questions? No questions. Thank you, Patty.
Thank you.
Okay, any requests for future agenda items? All right, I'm moving right along. County Clerk's report, correspondence or rezoning? Oh, I'm sorry. Supervisor Anderson.
I would like to review the sunset policy proposed by Supervisor Fiedler on the July 2023 meeting, right after the the HSA agenda item that is scheduled to come that day.
It'd be referred to the admin committee then at
for
their
June,
July
yeah.
2023 meeting.
Okay, I'll ask again. I'm sorry, I missed your request for future agenda items. Okay, County Clerk's report. Okay, and announcements, I'll just remind everybody, we are meeting tomorrow morning, correct? 8 o'clock sharp to review the proposed budget. And also as a reminder, next month's board meeting, the November morning board meeting will begin meeting at 8:30 in the morning rather than 5 o'clock. Tomorrow's 8 o'clock, but next month, the board meeting will be 8:30. Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, on the budget, this is your budget book. This is the only budget book you will get. If you don't plan to bring it back tomorrow morning, leave it on the desk. No one else is coming here in the next 12 and a half hours. If you want to take it home and read it, by all means, please do, but just bring it back tomorrow.
Nobody's going to read it tonight? Okay, it is 7:19. We are adjourned. We'll see you in the morning.